Okay, we're talking today about Babylon 5. This is episode number 6 of season 1 called The Parliament of Dreams. After this. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and this is an interesting episode in that it is a way to involve almost all of the characters. The B plot, basically, of all of this is that the ambassadors are having a formal gathering of all the other ambassadors and the executive crew of the space station to witness their dominant religious observance and in order to understand more about the other cultures. An interesting idea, and more interesting by the fact that they kind of tell us something about the nature of the races. But before we get into that, we want to mention to you that we have the finally introduction of Lanier, played by Bill Mumy, who was Will Robinson on Lost in Space, the original series. And he actually took the job thinking that he wasn't going to have to be in heavy makeup, and his heaviest makeup he's ever had, and said he would never do it again. He'd never take another science fiction job unless they just had him wearing a suit. And in fact, when they did the remake of Lost in Space recently with Parker Posey and the various others there, he appeared only in a photograph, and he's just in a lab coat. But that's beside the point here. We do have also the introduction of a love interest for Sinclair. Catherine is someone he's known since the academy, and by their own admission have seen each other about once every 3 years, and one or the other of them has to go and do something in their duty and breaks up. And in this particular time, that didn't happen, and it's an interesting thing that we're going to follow, I suppose, as the series progresses as to how their romance actually advances. And it's kind of interesting. It has something to say about Sinclair's sense of duty and his dedication to his job and his annoyance sometimes of always being the commander and never out of comms range for someone to say, we need authorization to power down a section here or something like that. So that's kind of an interesting view into Commander Sinclair. We also find out that he enjoys Tennyson, and that is evidenced by him listening to it being read to him in his quarters, and also of Catherine coming in and reciting some of it as well and saying, well, I lived with you for a year and it's bound to rub off. So an interesting thing there. We won't even talk about the main plot of this, which is someone trying to kill G'Kar. We'll get onto that. You can watch the episode and find the intrigue there. It's interesting, and there's a few little twists in it that are interesting as well. But what I really am interested in is these various religious rites. And they start, of course, with the Centauri. And the Centauri are partying folk. And so they recreate a funeral rite, and they have a big banquet table where everybody gets drunk and everybody is telling loud stories and jokes. And sometimes at the butt of the joke is the deceased, and Veer is kind of explaining it to the others while Londo is getting progressively drunker until he just passes out. And one of my favorite lines in it is as he passes out and is laid across the bar, Veer says he's become one with his inner self, and Garibaldi says he passed out, and Veer says that too. I thought it was funny. And by contrast, the Minbari have a very chant related, and they introduce Lanier as being kind of he says he's just out a novitiate, which in terms that we're familiar with, generally, usually in which you become eventually ordained. So anyway, Lanier says early on that he's going to make this a very memorable one because he's certainly very fresh in all of his education about this. And then there is also a mention once again of Delenn being on the Grey Council, and she tells Lanier not to ever call her by her titles and ever mention that she's on the Grey Council. Well, are we lying? No, they're just things that we don't want to tell people just yet, and swears Lanier to secrecy, who, as disciplined as he seems to be, should not be a problem. Well, we don't think so, as long as he remembers himself. And so their ritual was kneeling around an altar of sorts, and they bless a fruit, and everybody partakes in the fruit, and then they they exchange looks. And Catherine points out after it was all over with that the exchange of looks could be for a regular ceremony, or it could be for a marriage ceremony. Who looked at you? And it turns out that Delenn looked at the commander, but he said also that G'Kar looked at Londo. He said he didn't think that was going to be any kind of marriage going on there. So it was a nice show. It was a good peek into the major players we have here and their cultures. We see a little bit more of G'Kar and his aide. Also, we see him in full body makeup, which is kind of interesting as well. So all in all, enjoyable episode 6, The Parliament of Dreams. Let's see what you think about it. Please put it below, and we will read it and respond as we can. And of course, if you have not yet subscribed, that should be popping up right there. If you've not yet subscribed, please do so, and click the like button if you will, and then we will do more of this. We'll have a retro review of Deep Space Nine on Tuesday, Star Trek, the original series, on Wednesday, and yet another Babylon 5 on Friday. And of course, if you've not already seen it today, we do have another episode of Lower Decks. So until we talk to you again, don't go far.